Jack Marshall, a young human soldier, stepped out of his spacecraft onto the soft, blue-tinted soil of Senara, an alien planet unlike anything he had ever seen. The sky had a faint purple hue, and the air smelled fresh, almost sweet. Jack wasn't here for battle. This was a peaceful mission. The Senarans, the planet's native species, had invited humans to exchange knowledge and culture. It was a big deal for both sides, but Jack had no idea what to expect. As he adjusted his gear, he saw a group of tall, elegant figures approaching. The Senarans were humanoid, but they were different enough to remind Jack that he wasn't on Earth anymore. Their skin shimmered with a light silver tone, and their eyes were large, glowing faintly in the dim sunlight. They were beautiful in an otherworldly way, but one stood out the most. Lyra. Lyra was a researcher, one of the smartest in her field, and she had been chosen to work directly with the human team. She was taller than Jack by a few inches, with flowing silver hair that seemed to glow under the light. Her eyes, a bright shade of blue, stared at Jack with a mix of curiosity and excitement. Jack, feeling a bit nervous, nodded as they introduced themselves. "Welcome, Jack," Lyra said in a calm, soothing voice. "We are pleased to have you here." Jack smiled back, trying to hide his nerves. "Thanks. It's an honor to be here," he replied. His voice sounded smaller than usual, not because of fear, but because everything here felt different. It was a strange feeling to be so far from Earth, surrounded by beings that looked almost human but weren't. As they walked through the alien city, Jack noticed how advanced everything was. Buildings floated above the ground, and strange plants grew in patterns that looked like they were designed by an artist. It was beautiful but overwhelming. Lyra walked beside him, pointing out different places of interest, but her eyes kept drifting back to Jack. She wasn't looking at him like the other Xenarans, who were just curious about the human visitor. Her gaze was more focused, like she was studying him. "I've read a lot about humans," Lyra said suddenly, breaking the silence. "But seeing one in person is fascinating." Jack raised an eyebrow, unsure how to respond. Thanks, I guess." Lyra smiled softly. "Your body is very different from ours. I studied the anatomy, but there are some things that books can't explain." Jack felt a bit uneasy. He had been briefed about how curious the Xenarans were, especially when it came to human biology. But this felt a bit too personal. "Well, we're not that different," he said, trying to keep the conversation light. "We both walk, talk, breathe, that kind of stuff." Lyra tilted her head, her glowing eyes narrowing slightly. "Yes, but there are unique differences. I've noticed something while we've been walking." Jack's heart skipped a beat. "Oh, what's that?" "You seem to have a rising thing between your legs during certain moments. It happens when you're nervous or when I speak closely to you." Lyra's voice was innocent, but her words made Jack's face turn bright red. He couldn't believe what she just said. Jack stopped walking for a second, completely thrown off. Excuse me," he stammered, trying to think of a way to respond. Lyra's expression remained calm and curious. "It's something I haven't seen in our kind. Is it some sort of defense mechanism? A reaction to fear?" Jack shook his head, trying to keep his cool. No, it's not like that," he said quickly. He looked around, hoping no one else had heard the conversation. The Xenarans were open about a lot of things, but Jack wasn't ready to have this conversation with someone who didn't even understand what was happening. "Well, what is it then?" Lyra asked, her voice still as curious as before. Jack felt trapped. How was he supposed to explain something like this? "It's complicated," he finally said. "It's not something I can just talk about like that. It's a human thing." Lyra blinked, clearly not understanding his hesitation. "I see. Perhaps in time, you'll feel more comfortable explaining," she said, her tone still polite but persistent. "I only wish to learn." Jack nodded, though his mind was racing. This was not what he had expected when he landed on Xanera. The planet was beautiful, the people were welcoming, but now he had to figure out how to navigate a conversation that was way too personal for his liking. He made a mental note to be more careful around Lyra from now on. This was going to be a tricky mission, after all. A weird question. After their strange conversation, Jack tried to focus on the mission, but Lyra's odd question about the rising thing stuck in his head. He couldn't believe she had asked about something so personal in such a casual way. It was clear that Xenorans didn't see things the same way humans did, especially when it came to body-related topics. The next day, Jack was called to meet Lyra again for more discussions about human and alien biology. He walked into the research room, hoping to keep things more professional this time. The room was bright, with smooth, white walls and strange equipment Jack didn't recognize. Lyra stood in the middle, already waiting for him, her blue eyes glowing slightly in the dim light. "Good to see you again, Jack," she greeted him warmly. "Yeah, good to see you too," Jack replied, though he still felt a bit awkward. Lyra gestured for him to sit down. "I've been thinking a lot about our last conversation," she said, her tone as calm as ever. "There are many things I still don't understand about human bodies, and I hope you don't mind answering a few more questions." Jack's heart sank a little. He knew where this was going, and he wasn't sure if he was ready for it. Sure. I'll try to answer what I can." Lyra leaned forward, looking even more interested now. "About that rising thing. I've been studying human anatomy diagrams, but none of them explain what causes it. Does it happen randomly, or is it something you can control?" Jack felt his face heat up again. He had hoped that topic was over, but clearly, Lyra wasn't going to drop it. "It's not random," he said carefully, trying to find the right words. "It's connected to certain emotions, like when someone is embarrassed or, attracted to someone." Lyra tilted her head, clearly trying to understand. "So, it's a reaction to feelings?" "Yeah, kind of," Jack said, scratching the back of his head. "Humans are complicated like that. It's something we don't really talk about openly." Lyra nodded thoughtfully. "I see. It's a sensitive subject for humans, then." Jack let out a small sigh of relief. Maybe she was starting to get it. "Yeah, exactly. It's not something we discuss with just anyone." But Lyra still seemed puzzled. But why? If it's a natural reaction, why hide it? On Xanera, we don't hide our bodies or our reactions. Everything is open and understood. Jack blinked, trying to wrap his head around the cultural difference. Well, on Earth, things are different. We keep some things private, especially when it comes to feelings and body stuff. Lyra looked at Jack with even more curiosity. "Fascinating. So, humans feel embarrassment about their bodies?" Jack nodded. "Yeah, it's just how we are. Especially when it comes to, well, the rising thing. It's not something we like to talk about, especially with someone we don't know very well." Lyra considered this for a moment, her glowing eyes studying Jack's face. "I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable, Jack. I'm just very curious about human behavior." Jack relaxed a little. It was clear that Lyra wasn't trying to embarrass him on purpose. She was just genuinely curious. "I get it. It's just, humans are a bit more private than Xenorans. We don't share everything so openly." Lyra smiled softly. "Thank you for explaining. I'll try to be more careful with my questions from now on." Jack appreciated her understanding, but he still felt like he was in an awkward situation. He wasn't used to having these kinds of conversations, especially not with someone like Lyra, who was so blunt about it. Still, he could see that she was trying to learn. And maybe that wasn't such a bad thing. "Is there anything else you want to know?" Jack asked, hoping the next question would be less personal. Lyra paused for a moment, thinking. "Actually, yes. I was wondering how human emotions affect your body. You said the rising thing happens when you're attracted to someone. Does that mean humans have strong physical reactions to their emotions? Jack let out a small laugh, more at ease now. Yeah, you could say that. Humans are very emotional creatures. When we feel something strongly, fear, attraction, excitement, our bodies react. Sometimes it's obvious, like the rising thing, and other times it's more subtle. Lyra seemed fascinated by this idea. So, emotions and the body are deeply connected for humans. That's very different from our species. We don't have such strong physical reactions to feelings. Jack nodded. Yeah, that's what makes humans unique, I guess. Lyra smiled again, and for the first time, Jack felt like they were starting to understand each other better. The weirdness of their earlier conversation faded a little, replaced by a sense of mutual respect and curiosity. Maybe this mission wasn't going to be so bad after all. Lyra's big mistake. The next few days on Xenera passed by without much incident, but Jack couldn't shake the strange conversation he had with Lyra. Every time he saw her, he felt a mix of curiosity and embarrassment. He wasn't sure if she still thought about the rising thing, but he hoped that topic had been left behind. Jack was focused on his mission, but he had a feeling something odd was bound to happen again. One afternoon, Lyra invited Jack to her research lab for another session. This time, she promised it would be more about technology and less about personal topics. Jack was relieved. He walked into the lab, where Lyra was waiting with a series of strange gadgets and devices laid out on the table. Today, I want to show you how we use some of our advanced technology, Lyra said with a bright smile. She seemed excited, and Jack was happy to keep things professional. That sounds great, Jack said, trying to relax. He was still on guard, though. After their last conversation, he knew that things could take a strange turn quickly with Lyra's curiosity. Lyra picked up a small glowing device that looked like a metal bracelet. This is a Xeneran body scanner, she explained. It can analyze biological data instantly. It's one of our most advanced tools. Jack nodded, impressed. That's pretty cool. We have similar tech on Earth, but nothing that works that fast. Lyra smiled proudly. Yes, we've spent many years perfecting it. Would you like to try it? It can give us a detailed reading of your body's functions. Jack hesitated for a moment. Sure, as long as it's safe. Lyra waved off his concern. Completely safe. It's just a scan, nothing invasive. Jack stood still as Lyra placed the bracelet around his wrist. The device glowed brighter and began to hum softly. A holographic screen appeared in front of Lyra, displaying data that Jack couldn't understand. Lyra's eyes lit up with excitement as she looked at the readings. Amazing. Your heart rate, oxygen levels, and even your brain activity. Everything is being displayed in real time. Jack was impressed, but still felt a little uncomfortable. Yeah, it's pretty high-tech, he said, trying to sound casual. Lyra continued studying the screen, but then her expression changed. She frowned slightly, tilting her head as she examined one section of the data. That's interesting. Jack's heart skipped a beat. What? What's interesting? Lyra looked up at him, her glowing eyes wide with curiosity. Your body is showing a reaction, similar to what we talked about before. The rising thing seems to be happening again. Jack's face turned red immediately. Wait, what? No, it's not. Lyra pointed at the screen, but the data shows an increase in blood flow to that area. It's exactly like last time. Jack felt like the ground was about to swallow him whole. I swear, it's not happening. There's got to be something wrong with the scanner. Lyra, however, was more interested than ever. I don't think it's a malfunction. This is fascinating. The reaction is happening even though we're not discussing anything personal. Jack stepped back, trying to think of a way out of this awkward situation. Maybe it's just a random spike or something. I don't even feel anything. But Lyra was already too focused on her discovery. I need to test this further, she said, stepping closer to Jack. Let me see if touching your arm changes the reading. Before Jack could protest, Lyra reached out and gently placed her hand on his arm. The moment her hand touched him, the scanner beeped loudly, and the screen flashed with more data. Lyra's eyes widened in amazement. There it is. The reaction increased again, Lyra said excitedly. This confirms that human emotions trigger physical responses. Jack pulled his arm away, feeling both embarrassed and frustrated. Lyra, you can't just touch people like that. This is exactly what I was trying to explain before. Humans have personal space, and this is just too much. Lyra blinked, clearly not understanding why Jack was upset. But I'm only trying to understand your biology. I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable. Jack sighed, rubbing his temples. I know you didn't mean anything by it, but this is something that's really private for humans. You can't just go around scanning people and touching them to see what happens. Lyra looked genuinely apologetic. I see. I made a mistake, didn't I? Jack nodded, calming down a bit. Yeah, a big one. You've got to understand that humans don't talk about this kind of thing openly. And we definitely don't like it when someone touches us without asking. Lyra took a step back, her expression serious. I'm sorry, Jack. I didn't realize how important this was to your culture. I've been too focused on learning, and I didn't think about your feelings. Jack appreciated the apology, but he still felt a little awkward. It's okay. Just maybe take it slower next time. Lyra nodded, looking thoughtful. I will. Thank you for explaining it to me. I don't want to make you uncomfortable again. Jack managed a small smile. Thanks. I know you're just curious, but there are some things about humans that are best left unexplored. Trouble happens. The days that followed were tense. Jack had made it clear to Lyra that her curiosity had gone too far, but he couldn't help feeling that things were still awkward between them. He tried to focus on his mission, but his mind kept drifting back to the strange events in the lab. Lyra had apologized, yet Jack sensed something wasn't quite right. He hoped that everything would calm down, but trouble was just around the corner. One morning, Jack received an urgent message from the Xenoran base commander. The communication was brief and to the point. Report to the main hall immediately. A security situation has occurred. Jack didn't waste any time. He grabbed his gear and hurried to the main hall, his heart racing. What could have gone wrong? When he arrived, the hall was filled with both human and Xenoran personnel. There was tension in the air. At the front of the room, Lyra stood next to the commander, looking worried. Jack could tell from her face that whatever had happened, she was involved. Jack, we need to talk, the commander said in a serious tone. There's been a misunderstanding involving Lyra's research. Jack frowned, glancing at Lyra. What kind of misunderstanding? The commander sighed. It seems that Lyra has been continuing her studies on human biology without proper clearance. She used her body scanner on several human soldiers during their rest time. They didn't know what was happening and reported feeling invaded. This has caused a major uproar. Jack felt his stomach drop. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. You did what? He asked, turning to Lyra. Lyra's glowing blue eyes were filled with regret. I only wanted to collect more data. I thought it would help me understand humans better. But I see now that I made another mistake. Jack shook his head in disbelief. Lyra, we talked about this. You can't just scan people without their permission. That's not how things work. The commander stepped in. Unfortunately, the situation has escalated beyond just a few complaints. The soldiers feel violated, and the human side is considering filing formal charges. If this isn't resolved quickly, it could damage the entire alliance between humans and Xenorans. Jack rubbed his temples, feeling the weight of the situation. Lyra's curiosity had gone too far, and now it was threatening to cause serious trouble between the two species. He couldn't believe things had gotten this bad so quickly. I didn't mean for this to happen, Lyra said softly, looking genuinely upset. I only wanted to learn more. I didn't think it would cause harm. Jack took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. Lyra, you have to understand that humans value their privacy. When you scanned those soldiers without asking, they felt like their personal space was invaded. This is serious. The commander nodded. We need to find a way to fix this, and quickly. The human soldiers are demanding an explanation, and we need to make sure this doesn't lead to a breakdown in trust. Jack thought for a moment. Maybe I can talk to them. I know the guys who were scanned, and I think I can help them understand that it wasn't done with bad intentions. The commander looked relieved. That might be our best option. If you can calm them down, it could prevent this from escalating further. Jack turned to Lyra. You need to come with me. You're going to apologize to them directly, and you're going to explain why you did it. Lyra nodded, her face serious. I'll do whatever it takes to make this right. Together, Jack and Lyra made their way to the barracks where the human soldiers were waiting. The atmosphere was tense, and Jack could feel the anger in the room as soon as they walked in. The soldiers looked at Lyra with suspicion and distrust. Listen, guys, Jack began, raising his hands in a calming gesture. I know you're upset, and you have every right to be. What happened shouldn't have happened. But Lyra is here to explain herself, and I think you'll see that this was all just a misunderstanding. Lyra stepped forward, her voice calm but filled with regret. I am deeply sorry for what I did. I was driven by my curiosity and my desire to learn more about humans, but I see now that I went too far. I should have asked for your permission before using the scanner. I didn't mean to invade your privacy, and I hope you can forgive me. The soldiers exchanged glances, still not entirely convinced. One of them, a tall man named Davis, crossed his arms and frowned. It didn't feel like a misunderstanding. It felt like we were being treated like lab rats. Jack stepped in. I get it, Davis. But you know how aliens are. They don't always understand human boundaries. Lyra wasn't trying to mess with you. She just made a mistake. She's here now, owning up to it. And that says a lot. There was a long pause. The tension in the room was thick, but slowly the soldiers seemed to soften. Davis finally sighed. All right, Jack. I trust you, but this better not happen again. Lyra bowed her head respectfully. It won't. I've learned my lesson. With that, the worst of the crisis seemed to pass. Jack breathed a sigh of relief, knowing they had narrowly avoided a disaster. But in the back of his mind, he couldn't help but wonder what other trouble might still be waiting around the corner. The big difference. After the tension with the human soldiers settled, Jack thought things would finally go back to normal. But something lingered in his mind. Lyra's intense curiosity about humans. She had apologized, and they had avoided a major incident, but Jack knew that Lyra still didn't fully understand human behavior. There was a big difference between the way Xenorans and humans thought, and that gap was becoming more obvious. One evening, Jack found himself sitting outside, looking up at the twin moons of Tenera. The sky was filled with stars, and the cool breeze helped him relax. He thought about how different this planet was compared to Earth. The aliens, the technology, even the air felt different. Yet Jack felt oddly comfortable here, despite the misunderstandings. As he sat there, lost in thought, Lyra approached quietly. She had a way of moving that was almost silent, a skill common to her species. She sat down beside Jack without a word, her glowing eyes reflecting the light of the moons. For a few moments, neither of them spoke. Finally, Lyra broke the silence. I've been thinking a lot about what you said, Jack, about personal space and human boundaries. Jack glanced at her, wondering where this conversation was going. Yeah, what have you figured out? Lyra looked down, her expression thoughtful. It's hard for me to understand. Xenorans are much more open with each other. We don't have the same sense of privacy that humans do. We share everything. Thoughts, emotions, even physical space. But humans are different. You value your independence and your privacy. It's something I struggle to comprehend. Jack nodded. That's a pretty big difference between our species. Humans like to keep certain things to themselves. It's not just about physical space either. There are emotional boundaries too. We don't always share how we're feeling unless we really trust someone. Lyra frowned slightly. So when I scanned the soldiers, it wasn't just a physical invasion, but an emotional one too. Exactly, Jack said, glad that she was starting to get it. It's like you stepped into a space they weren't ready to share. Even if you didn't mean to, it made them feel exposed. Lyra sighed, her shoulders slumping. It's so strange to me. On Xenera, we're taught to share everything. We believe that the more we connect with each other, the stronger we are. Keeping things to yourself feels lonely. Jack leaned back, staring up at the stars. Humans are complicated like that. We want to connect, but we also need our space. It's a balance, and it's different for everyone. Some people are more open, while others are more private. You have to learn to read the signs. Lyra was silent for a moment, clearly deep in thought. I've noticed that humans smile a lot when they're comfortable, but sometimes they smile even when they're uncomfortable. It's confusing. Jack laughed. Yeah, that's true. Smiling can mean a lot of different things. Sometimes we smile to be polite, even if we don't feel happy. It's another part of our complicated nature. Lyra looked at Jack with a curious expression. Is that why you smiled when I first asked you about your rising thing? Jack groaned, rubbing his face with his hands. That's part of it. I was trying to stay polite because I didn't want to offend you. But inside, I was really embarrassed. Lyra's eyes widened. I see. You were uncomfortable, but you didn't want to show it. That's very different from how a Xeneran would act. Exactly, Jack said. Xenerans seem to be more direct. You don't hide your feelings, and you ask questions openly. Humans, well, we sometimes dance around uncomfortable topics. Lyra nodded slowly. This is why it's hard for me to understand humans. Your emotions are more hidden. It's like you wear masks, and I'm not sure when I'm seeing the real you. Jack thought about that for a moment. That's a good way to put it. We do wear masks sometimes, but that doesn't mean we're being fake. It's just our way of protecting ourselves. We show our true selves to people we trust, but it takes time to get there. Lyra tilted her head, clearly fascinated by the idea. So trust is the key to understanding humans. Yeah, Jack said, smiling. Trust is everything. Once you build trust with someone, they'll open up to you. But it's not something you can force. It happens naturally, over time. Lyra looked up at the stars, her expression thoughtful. I want to understand humans better, Jack. But I realize now that I need to be more patient. I need to give you space and build trust, instead of trying to learn everything all at once. Jack felt a sense of relief. That's a good start. We can learn from each other, but it's not a race. Take your time, and things will fall into place. For the first time, Jack felt like Lyra truly understood the difference between their species. It wasn't just about biology or technology. It was about how they connected with others. And though the gap between humans and Xenerans was wide, it wasn't impossible to bridge. As they sat there under the twin moons, Jack realized that this was just the beginning of their journey. They still had a lot to learn from each other, but with patience and trust, they could find common ground. And maybe, just maybe, their differences would bring them closer together rather than drive them apart. A new respect. As the days went by, Jack noticed a shift in his relationship with Lyra. She seemed to take his words to heart and was making a genuine effort to understand humans better. They spent more time together, and each conversation felt more open and respectful. Jack appreciated her curiosity, but now it felt different, more like a friendship than just an experiment. One sunny afternoon, Lyra invited Jack to the lush gardens near the research center. The garden was vibrant, filled with colorful alien flowers and strange plants that Jack had never seen before. The air was thick with sweet scents, and the sounds of chirping insects created a serene atmosphere. Jack was excited to see Lyra's favorite part of the planet. "I wanted to show you this," Lyra said, leading Jack down a winding path. "These plants are used for healing. They have properties that can help with many human ailments. I thought you might find it interesting." Jack followed closely, amazed by the beauty around him. "This place is incredible. I never expected Senara to have such amazing gardens." Lyra smiled, her glowing eyes sparkling in the sunlight. "There is so much more to learn about our world, and I want to share it with you." As they walked, Lyra picked a flower that looked like a cross between a lily and a starfish. Its petals shimmered in the light. "This one is especially rare. It can help with stress and anxiety." Jack raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "You mean it can help humans feel better?" "Exactly," Lyra said. "Our species has used these plants for centuries. I believe that sharing knowledge is the first step to building respect between our worlds." Jack nodded, impressed. "That makes a lot of sense. It's a way to connect and show that we care about each other's well-being." Lyra handed him the flower, her expression earnest. "I want you to have this. It's a symbol of our new friendship and respect." Jack accepted the flower, touched by her gesture. "Thank you, Lyra. I really appreciate it." They continued walking, and Jack decided to open up more. "You know, I've been thinking about how different our cultures are. It's fascinating, but also a bit overwhelming." Lyra looked at him with curiosity. "What do you mean?" Jack took a deep breath. "Well, for example, humans often show respect by keeping their distance at first. We're more reserved until we get to know someone. But you, on the other hand, are so open and direct. It's refreshing, but sometimes it feels too fast for me." Lyra considered his words carefully. "I understand. In my culture, we believe that sharing ourselves is a way to build trust. But I see now that I need to adapt to your way of doing things." Jack smiled. "Exactly. It's all about finding a balance. I've learned a lot from you, and I hope we can keep sharing our worlds with each other." Lyra beamed, her eyes sparkling. "I want to learn everything I can about humans. Each conversation brings us closer, and I feel like I am discovering a whole new part of myself." As they strolled through the garden, Jack felt a warmth growing between them. It wasn't just friendship, it was respect. He admired Lyra's willingness to learn, and he appreciated her openness about her culture. In return, he felt more comfortable sharing his own experiences and feelings. Suddenly, they heard a commotion nearby. Jack and Lyra exchanged curious glances and headed toward the noise. As they approached, they saw a group of Senaran soldiers gathered around a small clearing. They were whispering excitedly, and the atmosphere was charged with energy. "What's going on?" Jack asked one of the soldiers, a tall male named Raul. Raul turned, a grin spreading across his face. "You have to see this. One of our scientists found a rare creature in the forest. It's never been documented before." Jack felt a rush of excitement. "Really? What does it look like?" "Come see for yourself," Raul said, leading them to the clearing. As they arrived, Jack was amazed to see a small creature with bright blue fur and large, expressive eyes. It was unlike anything he had ever seen. The creature was playful, darting around, and making high-pitched sounds that resembled laughter. Lyra's eyes widened with delight. "It's adorable," she exclaimed, kneeling down to get a better look. Jack watched as Lyra's face lit up with joy. In that moment, he realized how much they had both changed. Lyra was no longer just a curious scientist. She was a friend who shared in the joy of discovery. And he was no longer just a human ambassador. He was part of a greater understanding between their worlds. As they watched the creature play, Jack turned to Lyra. "You know, I think this is what building respect looks like. It's about sharing experiences and appreciating each other's differences." Lyra nodded, her face glowing with happiness. "Yes, it is. And I feel grateful to have you as a friend, Jack." Jack smiled, feeling a warmth in his heart. "Me too, Lyra. This journey is just beginning, and I can't wait to see where it takes us. In that beautiful garden, surrounded by laughter and wonder, Jack and Lyra found a new respect for each other. Their friendship was growing stronger, bridging the gap between their two worlds. Together, they were discovering not only the beauty of Sanera, but also the beauty of understanding and connection. Growing friendship. As the weeks passed, Jack and Lyra's friendship blossomed. They spent almost every day together, exploring the wonders of Sanera and learning more about each other's cultures. Jack found himself looking forward to their time together. Lyra's curiosity was infectious, and her enthusiasm for life on Sanera opened his eyes to things he had never considered. One day, Jack decided to take Lyra on a tour of his favorite places around the research center. "I want to show you the training ground," he said, excitement bubbling in his voice. "You'll get to see how we prepare for missions and how our technology works." Lyra's eyes lit up. "That sounds amazing. I've only seen a little bit of what humans can do. I want to learn more." They walked hand in hand towards the training ground, chatting about everything from food to their favorite pastimes. Jack enjoyed explaining human sports, and Lyra was fascinated by the concept of competition. "You mean you play games to see who is the best?" she asked, her eyes wide with wonder. "Exactly. It's a way for us to bond and have fun," Jack explained. "Even if we don't win, we get to enjoy the time together." When they arrived at the training ground, they were met with the sight of soldiers practicing combat maneuvers. The air was filled with the sounds of their shouts and the clanging of weapons. Jack felt a rush of pride as he watched his fellow soldiers in action. "Wow, they look strong," Lyra exclaimed, her voice filled with awe. "Is that what you do?" Jack nodded, feeling a sense of camaraderie. "Yes, we train hard to be ready for anything. It's important for our safety and the safety of others." One of the soldiers, a muscular woman named Sarah, noticed Jack and Lyra watching. She jogged over, wiping sweat from her brow. "Hey, Jack, who's your friend?" "This is Lyra," Jack introduced her. "She's from Sanera and wants to learn about human training methods." Sarah extended her hand to Lyra. "Nice to meet you. You picked a great day to visit. Want to try some drills with us?" Lyra's eyes sparkled with excitement. "Can I?" Jack chuckled, knowing Lyra's eagerness often led her into interesting situations. "Are you sure you want to? It might be a bit intense." "I want to learn," Lyra insisted, her determination clear. "All right then," Sarah said, grinning. "Let's see what you've got." They joined the training session, and Jack felt a mix of pride and amusement as Lyra tried her best to keep up. The soldiers guided her through basic drills, teaching her how to move quickly and respond to commands. Lyra was surprisingly agile, her movements graceful and fluid. As they practiced, Jack watched Lyra with admiration. She was adapting quickly, laughing and smiling even when she stumbled. The soldiers cheered her on, and soon she became a part of their team. "See, you're doing great," Jack encouraged, feeling proud of her effort. "Just remember to breathe." Lyra nodded, panting but determined. "I'm trying. It's harder than I thought." After an hour of training, they gathered around for a break. Lyra collapsed onto the grass, panting and laughing. "That was fun. I didn't expect it to be so tiring." Jack joined her, both of them catching their breath. "You did awesome. You really kept up with them." Lyra smiled, her face glowing with joy. "Thank you. I love learning new things, especially about your world." Their connection deepened with every shared experience. Jack was impressed by Lyra's ability to embrace challenges, and Lyra appreciated Jack's encouragement. They were learning from each other, building a bridge of friendship that felt stronger every day. Later that week, Lyra invited Jack to her favorite spot on Sanera, a quiet lake surrounded by shimmering trees. "This place is special to me," she said as they sat by the water's edge. "I come here to think and relax." The water sparkled under the light of the twin moons, creating a magical atmosphere. Jack looked around, taking in the beauty. It's beautiful. I can see why you love it here. Lyra turned to him, her expression serious. I want to thank you for being so patient with me, Jack. I know I made mistakes in the beginning, but you didn't give up on me. You helped me understand so much. Jack smiled, touched by her words. Of course, Lyra. We all make mistakes. What matters is that we learn from them. I've enjoyed every moment we've spent together. Lyra took a deep breath, her eyes shining with sincerity. You've taught me that friendship is about respect and understanding. I appreciate that you've been open with me. It makes me want to learn even more. Feeling bold, Jack leaned a little closer. And I've learned that it's okay to be curious. Your perspective has opened my eyes to new possibilities. In that moment, they both felt a shift in their relationship. It was more than just curiosity or learning. It was genuine friendship. They were becoming allies, supporting each other in their journeys of discovery. As they sat by the lake, the soft sounds of nature surrounding them, Jack realized how lucky he was to have met Lyra. Their growing friendship had changed his view of Shannara, and he hoped it had done the same for her. With a gentle breeze ruffling their hair, Jack took Lyra's hand in his. I'm excited to see where this friendship takes us. There's so much more to discover together. Lyra smiled, squeezing his hand back. Me too, Jack. Let's keep exploring and learning from each other. Together, we can bridge our worlds. Under the glowing moons of Shannara, Jack and Lyra felt a new bond forming, stronger than ever before. They were no longer just a human and an alien. They were friends on a journey, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead.